Got a Bitcoin alert. The crypto breaking above $60,000 for the first time since April. The move comes as the SEC appears close to approving the first ever Bitcoin futures ETF. Bitcoin getting a further boost in the last hour after Jack Dorsey tweeted that Square is considering building a crypto mining system. So Bitcoin sitting at its highest levels in 6 months. Where is it headed from here? Let's get to the Chartmaster, Carter Worth of Worth Charting, to break it down. Hey, Carter.
How are you? Sort of a very dynamic day, and Bitcoin actually down sharply here just in the last few minutes, having been up sharply. I have simple two charts. Let's look at them. The first, one way to draw the lines. We know that the sell-off that stopped this summer found the trend line that was in effect since the pandemic low, bounced to the penny, and we have moved above the downward sloping or converging lines, call it a wedge, call it a triangle, it doesn't matter. And so that is a breakout above that thing. The second chart is really what to consider. So do we or don't we exceed the prior high? Now, what we know, if you look back there on the lower left, after that 60% sell-off from the pandemic, when we recovered, it took us a while to actually break out. Right, so the rule of thumb is, it doesn't matter whether it's Bitcoin or stock XYZ or currency or commodity, when you first approach a former high, before you can exceed it, you contend with it. So after a 64% sell-off in the pandemic low, it took 3 months for Bitcoin to actually move above its pre-COVID level. So here we are now back at the April 14th high, that's 64,870. We got as high as 62 and change, 63 today. And so the presumption is that you back and fill or back away before you actually exceed the high. It is something that happens more often than not.
All right. Carter, thank you. Carter Worth of Worth Charting. We'll see you a little bit later on in the show. Tim, where do you stand on Bitcoin and your other holdings in crypto, actually, Ethereum, et cetera?
Well, Mel, Mel, do you remember who had the #1 pick in the CNBC stock draft? Do you remember who that was?
You mean this past season? I mean, no. the one that's going on right now?
The one that's going on right now. You're looking at them, all right?
Yeah,
in case you forgot.
Okay.
And there was, and it was obviously it was a highly coveted pick because everybody wanted Bitcoin, even though it had only rallied. It already it was up. I don't know, 60% already to that point in the year. And so my point simply is, yes, I did draft it. It was not necessarily in character. But that stock since that point is up 20%. And the pullback that we saw from the first high, while, yes, there were moments and there were some headlines, everything from China to regulatory pressure, you never got the sense that there was an institution out there that owned Bitcoin that wanted to sell it and that people were looking for opportunities to buy on the way back here. So the charts have been technical and they've handled it. The biggest dynamic here is that the regulators are not eschewing, they're actually finding a way to regulate. That's the best thing ever for Bitcoin. And again, the institutional community wants to see this. More talk of Bitcoin ETFs, more talk of the SEC means more moves of Bitcoin going higher. What does it mean for the broader positioning across crypto? Obviously, very, very strong. And it obviously means we're looking for second and third level Bitcoin plays, which I think a lot of people see are certainly as Ethernet at this point.
Are you number one in the draft right now? I mean, are you in first place in the competition?
Well, no, look, Mel, we have to pick two stocks or securities.
Yes, I
My
know.
other one's
not
going quite as well.
Okay. All right. Just want a
clarification.
clarification.
Well, we
I'm
hold
not
ourselves
trying to pick on you
accountable
or
here.
anything like that or take you down.
Yep.
Just want a clarification for our audience. The announcement by Jack Dorsey is interesting that Square may get into Bitcoin mining, and I wouldn't think that would have an impact on some of those Bitcoin mining stocks, Grasso, that have been super levered to Bitcoin.
Yeah, so I just pulled up one on my screen, Marathon Digital. The stock is up 368%. And the chart is not that egregious to the upside. If you're looking to play something that really has the beta and the torque, I know you like that word, torque in the stock chart, I would play Mara, M-A-R-A, because it's priced at $48 and change, and you don't have to worry about a $62,000 coin or a $68,000 coin. If Bitcoin is going up, and I do believe it is, and most of the people on this desk believe it is, especially the man who's #1 in the stock picking all-stars, I do believe that this thing is going to probably 100,000 eventually. Then Mara is going to rip higher aggressively.
I don't think I've ever used the word torque on air. Micah, what do you think of
No,
Bitcoin?
you haven't. You always get mad at me.
Well, I mean, obviously, they've got a couple things going on. I mean, the more credible players adopt it formally, I mean, obviously, Square could be one of those, but the more of that you see, obviously, that's going to be a positive. And, of course, you know, we know that the definition of inflation is too much money chasing too few goods. Well, you know, the amount of Bitcoin is limited, seemingly. Fiat currencies are not, so that obviously is a tailwind. And then, of course, there's momentum itself. That would obviously be another reason why you might expect that if it breaks out, it could go substantially higher. And I expect that if it does encounter some resistance, which seems reasonable given what Carter was talking about and just what we know about you know, investor behavior. But if it does break out of those levels, I think the 100,000 number that Steve just talked about is certainly within reach. And not everything, by the way, that is closely tied to it is seeing the same highs. You know, Michael Saylor, obviously a huge Bitcoin bull. MicroStrategy is well off of its all-time highs. You know, having an ETF that is tied to the futures of Bitcoin obviously would be one way for equity market participants to give themselves exposure. Steve talked obviously about another one, but MicroStrategy is another as well.
All right.